started to invest in property in 1996, and I used a very simple strategy, which I'm going to share with you in a minute, and I'd used it over and over and over and over and over again until I had enough property to be able to not have to keep doing it. And I actually went up to Noosa. And when I went to Noosa, I met Jamie, and that was, well, I think a long time ago, I don't remember now, but probably 18 years ago. And we've kept in contact since and shared different strategies, but I guess we come from similar backgrounds, not a lot going for us. And I guess I got to the point where I just looked at the future and thought, well, I looked where everyone else was going and thought, I don't really want to be following that model, so I'm going to do something different. So I'm sitting on the beach in Noosa, and I had before I left, I was running a company called Asset Corporation, which was helping people do the same thing in different cities around Australia. And anyway, I'm sitting on the beach and I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? Has anyone here ever tried retiring? It's pretty boring. Retiring's good, but you still need something to do because everyone else is working. So where's all your friends? A lot of them are working. Well, in that social group I had at the time, but that's changed. But anyway, so I was sitting there on the beach and I decided to go to England. I made that decision in about 3 minutes. And I went home and I packed up my bags, and 3 weeks later I was on a plane bound for Heathrow. And I thought it was pretty tough getting started in Australia. Well, let me tell you about the UK, my goodness. I remember arriving there, and I'm staying with a relative in Brighton, and I've gone down to there's two things I need. I need a place to live and I need a bank account. And so I've gone to the real estate agent. I said, look, I need a place I'm looking to rent a property. And they said, yeah, sure. They said, have you got a bank account? I said, no. They said, well, we can't give you a property to rent until you've got a bank account. I said, oh, no problem. I'm going to see NatWest anyway. So I go over the road to NatWest, and I go into NatWest, and I said, I need to open a bank account. And they said, well, have you got a permanent address where you're living? I said, no, well, we can't give you a bank account. And that sums up the UK. So straight away, I realised, right, this is not going to be so easy. So I'm there in the UK, and I'm fighting the system. And eventually I get into property, and I take that same model, which I'm going to share with you in a minute, and I use it in the UK. Now, there's a few little gems that I'm going to give you through this 5, 6, 7 minute presentation. You might want to make a couple of notes, but I'll tell you one thing that's absolutely critical in investing, and that is that timing beats talent every time. And we're here talking about opportunities in the United States, which, in my opinion, you will probably never have this opportunity for the rest of your life, or maybe in a lifetime. So I'm traveling around the world looking for global opportunities, and if someone came up to me right now and said, where would you invest? It'd be Warren Buffett and Warren Bourget saying, that's the place. Now, there's other opportunities as well. There's other growing economies and other awesome places, but it works very well for us because we're in the same language. I spend a lot of time buying in the UK, and I spend a lot of money in investing in Portugal and Spain and Gibraltar and different parts of Europe. And there's complications, but for the most part, this is a system that we can implement quickly, rapidly, on the same terms. And we've never had a better environment. The Australian dollar is so strong, and the property price is so low, so you're getting a double whammy in this situation. So anyway, I went to the UK, and I finally managed to crack through, persistence, and I got the first property, and I used the same strategy. Next property, next property, next property, next property. And ended up buying streets, because it was probably the equivalent of what we've got in the States was what it was like back in 2001 when I went to the UK. And so in the end, I'm buying streets, or not streets, but lots of properties in the same street off the same seller, because people were ditching their properties, but the rents were really high. And the great thing about the UK and the similarity with the US is that they don't have a concept of negative gearing. Everything is positively geared. So imagine from day one, you're making money straight away. So in Australia, we're used to negative gearing. So it impacts on your cash flow. So would I buy here? No, there's two negatives. One, property prices are probably likely to go down, and we're dealing with a negative gearing environment. So you're not getting enough money to cover, in most cases, maybe not all, enough to cover your costs. Whereas abroad, and if you can think internationally, there's opportunities where you can buy under market value and you make cash flow straight away. It's a no-brainer. So ironically, I decided, I'm going to start teaching some people some strategies. So I've put £20,000 in the paper, in the different papers, in the Metro and the Independent and the Daily Mail in London. And I thought, because this is so important, and I put this money in, and so I ring the call centre the next day, and I say, how are we going? About 9 o'clock. I think, well, all the tradies will have, read it by now, and they said, how many people have we had booked in? They said, none. I said, my goodness, what's going on here? Next day, how many people have we had booked in? None. And that's because people in the UK, I rang a friend, it's like that TV show, I rang a friend. I said, what's going on? I put this advert in saying, learn how to make money in property, because when I went to the UK, I realised that people were just getting absolutely slammed. There were, the interest calculations on mortgages were done annually. The pensions were in crisis. You could see, 63 million people just going into oblivion. And so I was trying to educate. Anyway, my friend said, you can't charge, people won't pay. They'll only pay if they know you and they trust you. So I said, we'll make it free. So I put the last 2 ads in the paper for free. Well, the ads were pretty aggressive. It was learn how to become a multi-millionaire in, I think, 3 years or something like that. Well, the Brits weren't really used to that sort of marketing, but it went like wildfire. And it caught the attention of all the media. And so I did an event in London and an event in Manchester and an event in Birmingham. Then I had a final event in London. And so the first London event was a disaster. The second event in Manchester was a disaster. Birmingham was a complete and utter disaster. But what was happening is this groundswell was building for this final event in London. Anyway, so I go down to London, and I was expecting, maybe 50 people, and we had a couple of hundred people there, and about to walk into the room, and one of the girls that was working with me said, Warren, you need to sit down. So I said, right, what's going on? She said, we've got some people here that are very interested in what you're going to talk about. I had in the audience Ruby Wax, I had BBC News, I had national representation from the Irish, the RTE, the Times, the Guardian, the Independent, the Telegraph, the Australian wasn't there, that came in later, and the Irish Independent were all sitting there. And I was thinking, oh my God, this better be good. So I'm sitting there and I'm doing this presentation, and all this media is there, and all the cameras are there, and it's all going on. And because they've never seen, immediately they think this is a scam. But of course, I've just said, gone through the basics, which I'm going to show you the simple strategy. And to cut a long story short, that little video that I presented was recorded, and we put it. The 2-hour presentation was recorded, and we sold was only £10. We sold so many copies of that DVD that the British film industry gave it international recognition. We were actually outselling small produced movies. It was like bizarre. And the best bit is that people came and they were like, the lights turned on, and people were doing the strategy and they were becoming free, and it was amazing. And we had hundreds of thousands came to these little previews over the course of 4 years. And this the combination of the training and the combination of the investing, I had this experience which not many people have. And that is, I'm sitting there and I'm just going about my business one day, doing my thing, and my accountant rings me, and he says, Warren, after a little chat, he says, Warren, you need to leave the country. I said, why, Richard? He says, because the inland revenue, or the equivalent of the ATO, he said, your face and picture and name are all over the place. You've got all this money in the bank. You're going to get taxed to hell. I said, well, Richard, what am I going to do? He said, move to Monte Carlo tomorrow. So I take his advice, and I move down to Monte Carlo. So I'm this Australian dropout, 14-year-old, in Monte Carlo. And my form of transport was helicopters. You don't take the taxi, you just take the helicopter straight to Nice airport straight to London. So I'm living there, and every day I was coming home, I was thinking to myself, I was just looking at myself going, what am I doing here? Like, what's going on? It just was bizarre. And that was just simply as a result of applying that strategy. And as Jamie does, and as most of the speakers, Nick and many of the great speakers here do, is learn and teach. Learn and teach. I mean, how many people can you affect by what you've learnt this weekend? I'm a big believer in that methodology of not keeping things to yourself, but getting it out there. And one thing I wanted to explain to you, which I think is really important, is that, and this is a little lesson, because you might hit some boundaries when it comes to wanting to take on any strategy, but you might hit some boundaries in things like, for example, would I want to invest internationally? You might think, I feel more comfortable investing on my home soil, but don't think like that. Think global. Everything now is global anyway. Every stock market strategy is global. If you're doing Forex, it's global. If you're in property now, take it global. And there's simple reasons for that. You know, as Lou was saying, why would you buy one property in Australia that's negatively geared, that's losing you money, when you could buy for the same price 10 properties that are giving you instant cash flow? I mean, you know, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to grab onto that. But the lesson is that the minute you let go of limiting beliefs, and here's the clincher, you open yourself up to the world of what we call the totality of possibilities. Now, if I didn't make that decision to start investing, if I didn't make the decision to go to the UK, and I stayed where I was, I'd be standing, well, I wouldn't be standing here, I'd be standing somewhere with my nail and hammer tool bag on, banging out doors and windows. Fortunately, I've had this incredible experience where I've been able to live in different, not just visit, not just holiday, but actually live in different countries and really experience that. And property was my vehicle to accomplish that. So we don't need to go through that because you guys know all that story. I was looking at that and just going, I don't want to be part of it. The bottom line is the institutions of this world, governments, insurance companies, the schooling system, and all of those things only have one of two objectives for you for the rest of your life, basically, and that's to get you into debt, and banks included, to get you into debt and make you pay a lot of tax. That's it. That's their one objective. So we need to get clever around that to maximise our income returns, minimise taxation, which we've got a great team here to help you with. But that's basically the world's objective for you. And I didn't want to subscribe to that. I'm not a resident of this country. I visit it because I'm an Australian, but I also have a number of passports, and I'm a resident of Gibraltar for obvious reasons. Anyone actually been to Gibraltar here? Yeah, a couple of people. The Rock, fantastic place. It basically is a rock stuck on the end of Spain, with 33,000 residents, but it has some interesting benefits. Anyway, I want to share with you some statistics because I think this really sums up what I wanted to say. And I'm here just to give you really, the guys are talking about the content. I'm here really just to give you hopefully a bit of nudging. And I got this information from an insurance company. And when I got this information, I thought, wow, this is amazing. Now, and this was published document, right? And the document went, and I got this in the UK, but it's relevant anywhere around the world. They had on their documentation, if you retire at 55, life expectancy is 81, generally. Is that the right word? Generally, what I'm looking for? Sorry? Yeah. So 55, you retire at 55, life expectancy in general 81, when they're looking at all their clients. If you retire 5 years older, life expectancy decreases to 77. Across the board, on average. Of course, everyone, different ages, but, if they sum it all up, that's what they come up with. If you retire at 65, life expectancy decreases to 73. Now, here's the interesting thing. All around the world, the governments are looking to what? Increase the age of... Exactly, to qualify for retirement. They're just doing the mathematics. They're going, if we can get people to work longer, we're not going to have to pay out any money. So that's why I put here, you're on your own. You are on your own. The best thing you ever did was come here this weekend. It's time just to learn and implement. Learn, implement. Learn, implement. Because there is going to be, and in fact my theory and my philosophy is that this whole system out there is going to crumble and be in big trouble in the next 10 years. Because there's no money left anymore. I mean, there's tons of it out there, but you've got the banks went broke, and then the government's bought out the banks, and then now the governments are broke, so where's the next level? So what's going to happen? Two things, inevitable things. They'll stop spending money on public services, so all of that will go down the drain. Your doctors, nurses, hospitals, and things like that. Police, limiting number of police, and etc. And they're going to do one other thing. Increase what? Taxes. And then around and around and around we go. So the basic property strategy that I've used over for I guess it's getting on to 15 years. The 4 principles are very, very simple. And the great thing is the team here do these for you. Whereas I was out there doing each one on my own. I mean, you can do that too. But the thing is that you've got such a great resource here. And that is, you buy property, you always buy property under market value. The number one principle is simple. When you buy property, you make your money when you what? When you buy, not when you sell. Okay, so if you can find a property that's worth, just keep the numbers simple. If you can find a property worth 500,000 or 100,000 or 50,000, depending on where you're buying, but let's just say 500,000, it's worth 500,000, and you can buy it for 300,000, you've just made 200,000. So there's no greater way to make money than to identify those opportunities, and that's what we've got right now with these global opportunities. Obviously, add value to improve it, so you want to increase the value. At some stage in the future, you want to revalue it to release equity, and then you repeat the strategy. That's it. That's all I've done. Very, very simple for 15, 16, 18, whatever it is years. Now, this is one thing I get across to most of my clients because I haven't done speaking. In fact, ironically, the last time I spoke was here, in Australia was here, and that was in 2000, what year was that? 2005, 6, something like that. And now I just work normally with a handful of wealthy clients to buy properties in different countries. But I've always said to people in general, if you can, at the end of the day, own outright 4 properties plus your home, that is your pension or your superannuation. But you can make it 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 and do whatever you like. But I've always said, look, for the average person that's busy with families and whatever, but they need to know that they're doing something for the future, I've said, look, keep it simple. If you own 4 properties outright plus your home, that's great. You've got 4 streams of income, and anything you do over and above that, if you get into, share trading or Forex or working on the side or getting into your favourite hobby, it's all just a bonus. But that's just a simple strategy. So how do you do that? Well, I've done this. I've had 2 rotations of this now, 2 cycles. I'm onto my 3rd. So I would say, well, the goal is get your hands on 8 properties. Obviously, in the beginning, you're going to finance those, or you might cash them, whatever you decide to do. Wait for peaks in the market, gradually sell 4, pay off the debt remaining 4, and you own them. So you take advantage of property price, the capital growth. Well, typically, on average, properties double in price every 7 to 10 years. So let's say you get your hands on 8 properties in 7 to 10 years, you sell half, you pay off the debt, and you're done. That's it. I mean, does the strategy get any more simple than that? No, very, very simple. And in addition to that, you've got all the other things you can do in the meantime. Buy, sell, flip, renovate, trade, all sorts of things. But it's such a simple strategy, and I've just stuck with that time and time again, and it just works. It just works every time. Or the other option, of course, is that you can keep them. You can just work on a long-term strategy. Keep them. Rentals are always going to go up. Property prices are going to go up. Because the objective of property, at the end of the day, is to always give you security, cash flow, and lifestyle. That is the goal. And of course, and to diversify. As most of the speakers will say here, is that you want to be looking at as many sources of income as possible. So I can't get this point across strongly enough to you. I said before, timing beats talent every time. If you can take advantage of an opportunity that's going to give you rapid growth, that's what you're looking for, and that's what you've got. And it's an opportunity that you have right now. Now, there's a great team here, and I'm back here for a little bit. And I said, look, my focus is here as well on this strategy. In fact, it's solely focused on this strategy. And I said, yeah, I'll get involved. So you're more than welcome to talk to me as well, if you'd like to. I'll be here and for the next months and so on. And, of course, the great team that we have. But, yes, your opportunity is now. So that's really all I wanted to really get across to you today, and a brief introduction. But before I leave and Lou Hardy comes back, I just want to say that it's really great you came, because there's a lot of people out there doing other things today, sitting on the beach and playing cricket and all that sort of stuff. But one thing I learnt, and at the end of the day, I might be in a great position, but I was a 14-year-old school dropout, and the one thing or the 2 things that were most important to me was education, and that's what you've got here today, and the second thing was mixing with the right network, the right people, because those 2 things will fast-track you to where you want to go as quickly or as fast as it possibly can be done. So I'd love to talk to you if you're available after, and it's great being back, and thank you for your time.